Hi, and welcome Back to the Beginning. Today, I'm joined with Brenda Chapman, and I'm so excited for our chat, and I'm sure you all are as well who are tuning in and watching this back. If you don't know Brenda, she doesn't need an introduction, but she is an animator, or a director, a screenwriter, and many other slashy titles, as lots of us have in the industry. And she's worked on some of the children's media industry's best loved works, such as Brave and Lion King and The Prince of Egypt and many loved childhood classics. And I'm so looking forward to our conversation. So, Brenda, without further ado, welcome to the Children's Media Conference and to Back to the Beginning. I'm going to start right at the way back. And is there a core memory from your childhood that you're regularly reminded about in your career really stands out to you?
Well, thank you first for letting me be here and inviting me. I appreciate it. Well, one of the first things that I remember from my childhood is my mother and her encouragement of my drawing and my creativity. We used to play a game that I've played with my daughter over the years, and I love to play with kids, but I also love to play with adults. It's pretty exciting. It's pretty fun to see what comes out. It's called the Scribble Game, and my mom used to just make a little scribble on a piece of paper and tell me to make something out of it. So I'd try to make something out of it, like an elephant or a bug or a tree or whatever. And then I would make a scribble for her, and she would make something out of it, which I always found fascinating because I always thought she was an amazing artist. But yeah, that really set everything in motion. I mean, I think I was doing that since I could hold a pencil. So I was just a little thing when she started that with me. But it's a good game.
And you speak very fondly about your mum. What did she do? And she's obviously such a big influence in your creativity. Was she an inspiration in your career today in terms of what she did?
Yes, in a bit of a sad way. My mother wasn't an artist. She was a housewife, and she was a cook at a nursing home, and an elementary school, and all of those kind of things that lower middle class people in the Midwest have to do to make a living. But she was very talented, and she was raised during the Depression and by her grandparents. And she only had an 8th grade education, and and she went to a one-room schoolhouse for her education. And there was a teacher there that walked her home from school one day and offered the grandparents and asked if she could give my mother art lessons after school because she was so talented. And my great-grandfather basically said, don't put any ideas in her head. It's a waste of time to educate a woman. And that teacher was fired the next year. And that stuck with my mother for for her entire life, really. And so she was incredibly encouraging and supportive. And I don't think I would have thought it was possible without that encouragement.
You almost lived the career that she should have had, almost, or
Yeah.
not. I don't believe that people should have had things, but almost the career that she would have really wanted. I'm sure she's incredibly proud of you. Um, do you remember any like favorite TV shows or films or works growing up, books, in your childhood that you remember fondly or had an impact on your career today?
I used to come home every day after school and watch all the Tex Avery, Warner Brothers. I watched Bugs Bunny and Roadrunner and a lot of Underdog and Johnny Quest and all of these old TV shows. And I love to do that. And I would sit and draw while I was watching them after school every day. My mom let the chores wait until that was done, and then I had to help. But I did that. And then on occasion, when the old Disney films would come out in theaters, I loved Cinderella. I loved her resilience and her ability to power through even under not great circumstances. And Lady and the Tramp and all of those. I love the old Disney films, and we watch Wonderful World of Disney. And books. I loved Sherlock Holmes. Oh my God, I was obsessed. So as a kid, and even into my adulthood, I loved all of those. And Nancy Drew, I love a good mystery. So,
what was school like for you? Were you a good student? And do you think school was like a crucial step in your career looking back?
Yes, definitely a crucial step in my career, because I went to a local community college initially and took every art class they had. Mm-hmm. But it was in a really small town in the middle of Illinois in the Midwest, and there wasn't a lot of knowledge for animation or anything like that. So I eventually applied to Cal Arts in California, which was at the time the only school in the country that had an animation program, a character animation program, I should say. And so, yeah, I was dedicated, not only because I loved drawing and loved, animation and wanted to do that, but also I didn't come from a very wealthy family. And so I had to make it work and get a job. So there was a lot driving me, not only my creative drive, but also my need to make it work. Otherwise, I'd end up having to go back to Illinois and work at Walmart or something, which I really didn't want to do. So
yeah, very similar. I also grew up in a working class background, so it was always a case of, do I do this freelance job or do I go back and work at Starbucks? So when was the moment that you thought, yeah, this is what I want to do? I want to work in animation and storyboarding and children's film.
Oh, well, I always loved to draw and I always loved animation, but it didn't click until I was watching a film in a theater. I think I was a teenager, and I accidentally stayed and saw the credits. And then I was like, oh, people make these. Oh my gosh, I can do that. It was kind of exciting. And then it was like, I want to work for Disney. This is what I want to do. So actually, my sister worked with a woman who had a cousin who worked for Disney in the live action division. And I got his phone number and he agreed to talk to me. And he knew nothing about animation, but he connected me with the animation division and they sent me a brochure about Cal Arts. So, and at that time, there was no internet, there was no any kind of being able to just figure things out at the tip of your fingers. But so everyone who went to Cal Arts thought, I want to be an animator, the one who makes the characters move, because that's all you saw when you watched Wonderful World of Disney. You saw the animators. You didn't see the background painters. You didn't see the layout artists. You didn't see the story artists. You didn't see any of the other aspects of animation. So once I got to Cal Arts, as I was going through, I actually found the animation aspect kind of tedious. And what I found that I loved was figuring out the story and doing the storyboards. And it was the late, great Joe Ranft, who was one of the best story artists in the industry, was a friend and who was teaching another class there. But he'd stopped by to say hello and saw my boards and said, hey, you ever think about getting into story? Because he was a story artist at Disney at that time. So he was the one who sort of turned my head. It's like I could do that. I could switch. So yeah, you learn along the way. You have one goal, and then you can find it can shift slightly, and it life has a way of doing that. So.
It's also so interesting, like looking back on the career you had and where you come from. So like very humble beginnings, but you not only were in 1998 the first woman to direct an animated feature film from a major studio, which was DreamWorks Animation, The Prince of Egypt. You were the first woman to be head of story and to win an Annie for the animated feature film The Lion King. In 2012, you then wrote and directed the Disney Pixar film Brave, becoming the first woman to win an Academy Award for Best Animated Feature for that. And then you went and won a BAFTA as well for that role. Incredible, incredible achievements. And, as a woman, that's a lot of weight to carry. Do you think being a woman in the industry, there's been anything that you've ever felt has held you back, or anything you'd like to speak to this struggle, I guess, of, being in kind of like a male dominated industry?
I feel like in the beginning at Disney, I was embraced because I was a woman. Mainly, I was bringing something different to the table. I had done a student film at CalArts that was very different than what most of my other classmates had done. I was one of four women in a class of 35, I believe. So it was a very low percentage of women, and most of the films done there were gag films. They were like funny, and I'd done this little emotional film about an old lady who was alone on her birthday, and that got the attention of John Musker and Ron Clements, who were gearing up to direct Little Mermaid, and they wanted me on the film because they just saw something that I might bring. And so I started as a trainee on that. And other than the entrance interview where the guy who was an executive obviously didn't want to hire a woman, he was like, well, we're training you for 6 weeks. If you don't work out, we'll find someone else. You're cheap. You're right out of school. And, I'm getting a lot of flack from upstairs about not having any women in the story department. So, it was like my bubble just went deflated. But then I found out years later that Ron and John were the ones who wanted to hire me. But then I got in to the room and working with everyone, and it was lovely. I worked with the loveliest group of men. Yes, I was the only woman in the room, but they were very curious as to what I was bringing to the table, and just a different perspective, and very open to it, and all of that. But as the years went on, and I moved to different studios, and it got a little harder as the years went on, and the more I rose in my career from a story artist to a head of story, that worked pretty well because that was still at Disney in that time. And on Lion King, it was a great opportunity, and I had an amazing team, and Roger Allers, who had been my mentor on Little Mermaid, and as over the years was one of the directors. So that was a great situation. But then as I moved on up into directing and different studios, it got a little harder because I think I looked more like a threat to certain people. And so it would, but at the same time, I think what I brought to being a director and a leader was more of a nurturing quality, and an inclusive. I know that I'm not the only one who knows everything in the room. I know that there are people who are better at their job than I would be at it, and so what they bring to that is really important. And so I made sure that they felt safe enough to speak up and bring themselves to the table. And so, with directors who don't do that at a studio, that can sometimes come off a little threatening, because then you have a crew who rallies behind you and works hard and does great work. So
I think it's really inspiring, because obviously you've done incredible work, and it's just testament to the fact of it doesn't really matter about gender at the end of the day. It's kind of what you bring to the table as a person, and obviously that something was seen in your work, and that's just developed and gone on to new things, and that's really inspiring. And looking back today, we spoke a little bit about this before. Is there, you've worked on some incredible productions. Is there anything that you look back on your career as your most treasured memory of working? And I'll ask the question after. Actually, we'll start with this one.
There's so many. on Little Mermaid, which was my first film, I was given a really great opportunity to work on the scene where Ariel pulls. She does. It's not the action sequence where she rescues him, but she's singing to him on the beach after she's rescued him, and then she goes off to the rock to watch. And I boarded the scene where the splash hits her behind the rock as she's singing, and the look on the director's faces when they saw that scene. You know, my drawing wasn't great, nothing, but they really liked how the music hit with that, and they were very happy with that idea. And just, I don't know, it was just the incredible friendships I still have from those early Disney days, especially. But Prince of Egypt, and it's the friendships and the relationships and the being able to see other people get excited about the films we're working on together, and that collaboration. I love kicking around ideas with people, and that spark that flies around the room is just amazing.
And kind of coming into the part of the interview where we're talking about the future, you've done so much, but is there any aspirations for the future of your career that you haven't quite yet completed that you would look forward to doing?
Oh, I want to do another film that would, speak to people and say something that you don't get to see as much anymore. We are seeing a lot more strong women in these roles, that aren't just about, finding true love, I'm working on a couple of projects that I'm excited about, and I hope get to make it to the finish line. I'm writing a couple of books, and that's been a real challenge because I haven't done that before. So I'm having some fun, but a lot of I'm losing my hair, so because it's hard. Especially when you're working by yourself. That's the hard part about being a writer.
No one to bounce ideas off of.
Exactly. But I'm hoping to see from other people, young people, and what they're going to bring to the table now that they've had, a childhood full of things that I and my colleagues have worked on. I'd love to see how you all take it, and run with it. So very excited about. There's so many platforms to show them on now.
Definitely, I feel like the industry's changed so much over the years, especially in this very early history or late history, if you were. And kind of going on from that, is there where do you see the future of children's film and animation film going? What excites you about the industry today?
Just the fact that all these subjects are open to them now. It just seemed for years during my time in the industry, it seemed so pigeonholed, and we worked so hard to get out of the fairy tale romance, and that's why Brave exists. I love fairy tales, but I wanted to get out of the romance and try some other stories that reach audiences. So now I think the world seems to be more open to other points of view. And there are other parts of the world that aren't so open to other points of view, but I'm hoping that the ones who are can influence those ones who aren't, and maybe get to see a little bit more compassion, more kindness, and how you can get through adversity in many different subject matters, So that's the exciting part for me, is that there's just so much more out there to be told that people are aware of. So
thank you so much for speaking to me today. I know that I got so much from that conversation, and I really hope everyone watching also did as well. And thank you so much for your time.
Oh, thanks for having me.